Los Angeles tonight, and there are protesters still out there liable to be arrested, to be detained. That's what you're saying?
They could be. They could be. I'm sure they just go up and they say, hey, it's 8:01. You need to get out of here. And sometimes, honestly, the protesters are out there and, they're kind of making a statement stuff, but they don't all want to go to jail. They don't all want to get detained. I mean, there are some that want to make a statement and get arrested and things like that. But for the most part, usually, depending on the tempo of what's going on and the fervor of the crowd, that usually around that transition period, they'll move out there. We certainly saw this in previous protests where it got to the time where they were supposed to get off the streets and it was clearly communicated to them, hey, it's time to go. You got to clear this area.
Okay.
And normally they will, not always, but I will say this, if they start wantonly violating their curfew, if they are out there doing vandalism and violence and stuff after the curfew, well, that's a dangerous shift in the situation. And honestly, that's something that President Trump might cite in his decision-making process.
I want to put up this post by our colleague at Fox 11, reporter Matthew Seedorf, saying this: more than 220 people were arrested in downtown Los Angeles Tuesday. That's yesterday. This includes a person accused of pointing a laser at an LAPD helicopter, one assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, and 3 people illegally in possession of firearms. Hal, what do you make of that? 3 people who were detained, who were arrested, they had guns on them during this protest. How does that happen?
All 3 of the things that they pointed out there are very serious. Obviously, the firearms jumps out, but I would say assault with a deadly weapon. Look, a brick can be a very deadly weapon. A metal pole can be a deadly weapon. Incredible mayhem can be caused by that. But I want to point out one that doesn't get enough attention. That laser at a helicopter, that right there is a felony. If they laze a helicopter, they can dazzle, which means blind or temporarily blind the pilots in a helicopter. You could imagine the potential hazard that poses if the pilots of the helicopter can't see when they're flying in an urban area with tall buildings trying to do stuff. That is a very serious crime, and so all 3 of those things are very serious crimes, and hopefully putting that out there will quell that kind of stuff. But it also says another thing too. They're looking actively, and they should be. They're looking actively to find out if anybody in the crowd is carrying a firearm, and it's good that they were able to do that.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will deter anyone else from doing something really as dangerous and just plainly stupid as going to a protest with a firearm.
So, Hal, I'm not entirely sure if this next question is the right question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's becoming a frequent topic of conversation, especially on Capitol Hill, from Republican lawmakers especially, whether or not these protests are so organized that they are paid for by certain activist groups here. In what you have seen with regard to the formulation of the protests, do you think they're decentralized or centralized? Is there a top leadership chart in the organization all the way on down? Or no, is it more organic than what we're seeing? What say you on that question?
That's actually a very good question. And I understand the FBI is actually actively investigating that to find that out. I'm going to say one thing about protests, and we've seen this. We saw this going back some years back with Antifa, for example, would be out there protesting, and it would look like a spontaneous protest. But when you start looking at various different protests, you start to see the same individuals show up in different locations, and it looked like they were doing things like command and control. So there are those out there who are, dare I say, professional protesters, in some cases professional rioters, if you will. They go in there and they take advantage of these situations. I have no doubt there are some on the ground here who really don't have a strong feeling one way or another about the topic du jour, but they see it as an opportunity to protest. And in the past, we
Good morning, and thank you so much for waking up with us here on Live Now from Fox. It's Thursday morning, June 12th. I'm Jeanne Francine here with you for the next few hours to give you all of your breaking news alerts, top stories, and of course your live events of the day. As we come on the air this Thursday morning, just happening moments ago before we came on live, breaking news out in India. Take a good look at your screen. I will say viewer discretion is advised. This is a live feed, and we are trying to monitor the latest images. The Associated Press reporting early this Thursday, an Air India passenger plane bound for London with 244 people on board crashed this Thursday in India's northwestern city of Ahmedabad, the airplane and local media reporting. Visuals on local television channels and what you're seeing live right here on Live Now from Fox show smoke billowing from the crash site near the airport in Ahmedabad, a city with a population of more than 5 million. The Director General of the Directorate of Civil Aviation told the Associated Press that Air India flight AL-171, which is a Boeing 787-8, crashed into a residential area about 5 minutes after taking off at 1:38 p.m. local time. We are learning there were 232 passengers and 12 crew members aboard the flight, which had been bound for London's Gatwick Airport. Gatwick posting on X this Thursday that it could confirm the flight, which had been due to arrive at 6:25 p.m. in London, which did crash on departure. As we further survey this breaking news, India's civil aviation minister posting on X as well that rescue teams have been mobilized. You are seeing that in real time as well. We're also learning that all efforts are being made to ensure medical aid and relief support at the site. The 787 Dreamliner is a wide-body twin-engine plane. We're learning this is the first crash ever of a Boeing 787 aircraft, according to the Aviation Safety Network database. The aircraft was introduced back in 2009 with more than 1,000 delivered to dozens of airlines, according to the Flight Trader 24 website. We are continuing to monitor this live feed. If you're just now tuning in, good morning to you. Breaking news this Thursday. We are learning the Air India passenger plane with 244 aboard has crashed in India's northwestern Ahmedabad city. Again, you are getting a live look there as chaos is unfolding, understandably so. Again, viewer discretion is advised. You can see the feed going in and out as rescue operations are underway, people flocking to the area to figure out what is going on. I do want to pot up the audio just to set the mood and the scene as all of this is unfolding. All right, so the audio going in and out, but you could hear rescue operations underway. You heard an ambulance, emergency vehicle in the distance. Just tragic news to learn this Thursday. Again, if you're just now tuning in, this Air India passenger plane with 244 aboard has crashed in India's northwestern city of Ahmedabad in India. We will continue to follow this breaking news alert right here on Live Now from Fox. Of course, we will share the latest developments. As we continue with your top stories and headlines, we do want to transition to other international news on this Thursday morning. It takes us out to Gaza. Transitioning your screen right now as we continue to follow top stories and headlines. We are learning bright and early on this Thursday morning that the United Nations, they are set to make some decisions. AP reporting the UN General Assembly is expected to vote this Thursday on a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all hostages held by Hamas, and the opening of all Israeli border crossings for delivery of desperately needed food and other aid. AP goes on to report the resolution drafted by Spain and obtained by AP, quote, strongly condemns any use of starvation of civilians as a method of warfare. Now, experts and human rights workers say hunger is widespread in Gaza, and some 2 million Palestinians are at risk of famine if Israel does not fully lift its blockade and halt its military campaign, which it renewed back in March after ending a ceasefire with Hamas. For further perspective, this Thursday morning, we do look back to last week when the UN Security Council failed to pass a resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and calling on Israel to lift all restrictions on the delivery of aid. The United States vetoed the resolution because it was not linked to the release of hostages, while all 14 other members of the council voted in favor. There are no vetoes in the 193-member General Assembly, where the resolution is expected to pass overwhelmingly. But unlike in the Security Council, Assembly resolutions are not legally binding, though they are seen as a barometer of world opinion. We do know after that 10-week blockade that barred all aid to Gaza, Israel is allowing the United Nations to deliver a trickle of food assistance and is backing a newly created U.S. aid group, which has opened several sites in the center and south of the territory to deliver food parcels. The draft resolution being voted on this Thursday references a March 28th legally binding order by the top UN court for Israel to open more land crossings into Gaza for food, water, fuel, and other supplies. The International Court of Justice issuing the order in a case brought by South Africa, accusing Israel of acts of genocide in its war in Gaza, and of course charges Israel strongly denies this Thursday morning. The resolution also stressing that Israel, as an occupying power, has an obligation under international law to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those in need. The resolution supports mediation efforts by Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. aimed at implementing a January ceasefire agreement. When the U.S. vetoed last week's Gaza resolution, acting ambassador for the UN said it would have undermined the security of Israel and diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire that reflects the realities on the ground. So, of course, a lot to follow on this Thursday morning, June 12th, in your international headlines. If you're just now tuning in, we are following this developing story as this Thursday, the UN is set to vote on a resolution demanding a Gaza ceasefire, hostage release, and aid access. I can't tell you, sometimes we'll actually get a live feed inside of the United Nations as these proceedings get underway to hear from all of the different partners who are voting. And of course, if that happens, we'll share it with you right here on Live Now from Fox. The time now 6:05 here on the East Coast. I'm Jeanne Francine. As we continue with your top stories and headlines, we are going to step aside for our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. But when we come back, we are going to transition stateside. I want to take you out, giving you a live look, the beautiful city of Angels, Los Angeles, on your screen. As when we come back, we will be transitioning, checking in with Fox News correspondent Ted Linder to understand the very latest of the Los Angeles protests and nationwide anti-immigration demonstrations. We'll also have the very latest from our content partners over at Fox 11 LA. The details in just 2 quick minutes. Don't go anywhere. 6:06 here on the East Coast. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Jeannie Francine, continuing with your top stories and headlines. And right now, we do want to transition to a top story many of you all have been following with us here on Live Now from Fox as it relates to those immigration protests across America. Right now, I want to share with you some of the latest video coming into our Live Now from Fox studios, which shows how these protests have erupted and become very chaotic across America. We do know the Trump administration says its choice to deploy National Guard troops and Marines to Los Angeles is meant to enforce public safety and peace. Meanwhile, local leaders argue the move is igniting fears and surging tensions. This comes as additional protests continue to erupt nationwide in response to President Donald Trump's immigration crackdowns and, of course, deportation plans. Right now, we're going to check in with Fox News' Ted Linder as he does report on the very latest.
A portion of downtown Los Angeles falling under a curfew again Wednesday night as protests against Trump administration immigration raids continued there for a sixth straight day.
A week ago, everything was peaceful. Things began to be difficult on Friday when raids took place.
Local leaders are urging demonstrators to practice peace. This as about 700 Marines are receiving civil disturbance training in nearby Orange County. Officials not yet revealing when the Marines may join the roughly 2,000 National Guard troops previously deployed to downtown L.A. Federal officials expect another 2,000 Guard troops will mobilize on Thursday. Golden State Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass say the troops' presence is heightening tensions.
Maybe we are part of a national experiment to determine how far the federal government can go in reaching in and taking over power.
Meanwhile, the Los Angeles protests continue inspiring similar calls for action across other cities.
Seeking a better life is not a crime.
Like San Antonio, Texas.
We need to stand together.
Las Vegas and New York. Trump administration officials say the president is committed to free speech.
He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind.
Marches and rallies are expected to carry into the weekend, with nationwide events set for Saturday to protest the military parade in Washington, D.C., celebrating the Army's 250th birthday. Ted Linder, Fox News.
All right, Ted, thank you so much for that detailed report. And as we further discuss the LA protests on this Thursday morning, again, giving you a beautiful skyline shot there in Los Angeles. I do want to transition right now and check in with our content partners as they were just on the air a few hours ago, Fox 11 LA, sharing the very latest information.
More looting and destruction from happening. Will it continue to work?
I don't trust what they say. I see them going after people that they say are criminals, but they've been here for a very long time, and they're just trying to make an honest day's wages.
Tear gas, unmarked SUVs, and a family caught in the middle. Federal agents make a dramatic arrest in Boyle Heights. Was it enough?
Day and night six of demonstrations in downtown L.A.
Good evening. Welcome to Fox 7 News at 10 o'clock. I'm Ellis Michael.
And I'm Christine Devine. A heavy police presence cleared protesters from the downtown area after that curfew went into effect at 8 o'clock.
So what's happening now? Let's go live to Fox 11's Ed Laskos there with the latest. Ed.
And we're now entering the third hour of this curfew on the second night through the heart of downtown L.A. Most of the protesters, they're out of the protest zone. I should say the curfew zone. Yes, arrests have been made. Still no exact number on just how many arrests involving LAPD. This is what you see. This is CHP, one of the many on-ramps and off-ramps of the 101, the Hollywood freeways that cuts through the east side of downtown. They have these ramps shut off, concerned at one point the protesters might make a run, as we've seen before, onto the freeway itself. That did not happen, but of course now it's really part of checkpoints, if you will, to enforce that curfew to keep people from coming into the downtown area, that 1 square mile area now under the curfew for the second night. To the video we go. Check this. When you're talking about a curfew downtown LA this late hour, this is pretty much what you see. Convoys of law enforcement on the move, lights and sirens, black and whites, LAPD convoys, California Highway Patrol convoys. This is CHP moving up to take another position further up on the Hollywood freeway, the 101. to want as it gets closer over to the hitting the 110. Moving around, concerned that what protesters we had left, they crossed over the freeway, so they got out of the curfew zone, moved over into the east side, over to the Boyle Heights area, and the concern was they want to fortify that section so they don't make a run back in. That hasn't been the case, and that certainly doesn't seem to be the threat at this point. But certainly when you talk about the protest and you talk about tension, some standoffs here, including one that happened about an hour before the curfew went into effect. We're talking about just outside City Hall, the west side of City Hall. Look at this dramatic confrontation, LAPD and the protesters. Listen. Chaos outside City Hall, the west side. That was the crowd moved back. They actually came from Pershing Square. They had a big rally there, a couple hundred strong. They marched down over by Grand Park. CHP declared it, along with LAPD, really an unlawful assembly. They moved in, particularly with their mounted units, pushed that crowd back, pushed them on to Grand Park. Then that's when the group splintered. Some of them wound up top of the Grand Park area, taken into custody. Several arrests made there. Another smaller group ran around, went on the backside over to the east side of City Hall, and there they stood face to face with a skirmish line. The curfew hit, and then about 10-15 minutes after 8, they decided, along with their leadership yelling at them, come on, let's move out. And that's when that last group of protesters started to hike across and get across the freeway. But this wild scene playing out. Again, no tear gas used here by LAPD. They used the horses effectively, moving the crowd in. A couple times you saw them swinging with the horses, and the officers on top of the horses going after some of the protesters who tried to move in on City Hall and tag City Hall itself. LAPD, certainly I was right up there today, not in any mood to fool around, enforcing the law big time. Back out here live, Joe will give you a look. This is some of the checkpoints. You still have some of the cars moving through here, and they can move through if they have the proper identification, a license that shows that they live downtown and are able to get into some of the nice skyscrapers, the nice condos that are down in the heart of this evacuation, or I should say the curfew zone, I'm sorry. But it is, I was thinking, almost like an evacuation zone, because when you're in this area, it sure feels like that. You walk around, there's no traffic. It's a very eerie feeling late on this Wednesday night. Back to the west side we go.
Yeah, and we've seen you report so often from Palisades, which has had its own evacuation zones. So these were scenes from downtown LA this morning. Saw looted stores, empty streets, police spending much of last night arresting more than 200 curfew violators, vandals, looters. The city sent in work crews this morning to help some of those small businesses shattered up with the shattered windows and clean up that mess left behind.
LA Mayor Karen Bass railed against the Trump administration again today and its response to the immigration riots.
Today it was the city of Los Angeles. Tomorrow it's one of your cities. When this type of chaotic behavior from Washington, D.C. is forced upon a city, upon all of our cities, then again the fear and the terror that is in our populations is profound and very traumatizing.
Downey's mayor right there joining her. He revealed ICE